Everybody's time. We are recording this presentation and it may be posted to our website for future use. Please remember to keep yourself muted. And if you have any questions during today's presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat box and Mark will address them later on this hour. So my name is Beth Rossner. I'm the CEO of Berkeley Chamber, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're going to just dive right in. I'm going to turn it over to our presenter today, Mark Herbert from the Small Business Majority. He'll tell us a little bit about himself and his company, and then we'll get into the presentation. Take it away, Mark.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Beth. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see you all and appreciate the opportunity to join you this afternoon. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So my name's Mark. I am with an organization called Small Business Majority. We are a small business education and advocacy organization. And really, fundamentally, we exist to help entrepreneurs take their next step on their entrepreneurial journey. And really excited to be here today to chat a little bit about the California Comeback Plan. There was a lot that has happened over this last year in state government as it relates to policies. So we'll try to condense as much as we can into this next hour. We have a lot to cover. You will get a copy of the slide deck because you will not have to memorize it. There's a lot of information here. As we scroll through this, we'll try to keep it relatively high level, get into the weeds on some things. Feel free to throw your questions into the chat as we go. We'll have plenty of time at the end to go over questions. If I am not able to answer your question, which is very possible and even likely with this group, I will do my best to get an answer for y'all and get back to you. But really excited to be here and appreciate the opportunity to chat a little bit about what's really happened over this past year as it relates to policy. So just a little quick, a little bit more information on Small Business Majority, who we are. So we are a national organization, as I mentioned. And all of our work is really organized around sort of these two core fundamental beliefs. So one is we believe that entrepreneurs and small business owners, such as yourselves, are essential building blocks to a healthy, sustainable, thriving local community and economy. And entrepreneurs deserve the tools that they need to be successful. So we do a lot of workshops like this on a whole host of different topics, really wanting to make sure that entrepreneurs and small business owners have access to the latest information about how to make sure that you can continue to grow your business. And the second core belief is we believe that there's this authentic voice of small business that exists in public policy. It's just vastly underrepresented. And we want to make sure that authentic voice is part of stakeholder conversations in state capitals and in DC, and making sure that that perspective is part of the discussion. We do this through polling. So we do a bunch of polling of business owners to get a sense of what they actually think about policies, things that matter. And then we also are a platform for entrepreneurs who want to plug in and have their voices be part of policymakers' conversations in DC. So we have a great communications team. We'll do advocacy training. We'll do op-ed, writing, collaboration, submitting testimony, and that sort of thing. So we really just want to make sure that entrepreneurs have the tools that they need, and then also ensure that we're able to connect that voice, that authentic voice of small business with stakeholders and decision makers so that the policies that actually move the needle for entrepreneurs are actually part of the conversation. So already talked a little bit about this. Here's who we are, about 85,000 businesses across the country. We're not a membership-driven organization. All of our resources are free. And as I mentioned, we've done a lot of workshops like this. We've done a lot, obviously, on the federal relief programs like PPP and EIDL and those sorts of things. We'll continue to make sure that we stay on top of that. But for the purposes of this presentation, it's really about what we've seen in the budget and in state government over this past year. There's, as I mentioned, there's a lot. So we'll do a little bit about some of the state sort of relief tax credits, sort of high level. Some of them are live right now. Some of them are coming. So things just to be aware of. And if you have a CPA, to make sure that you let them know these things are happening, whether or not you may be eligible is something worth checking out. Talk a little bit of, there's some pay leave activity. There's a grant program so if you've had any of your employees who've had to take paid leave for any real reason at all over this past year, there is a grant that's available for you as a business owner. There are also some new access to capital opportunities through the California Rebuilding Fund and a couple other smaller programs that we'll cover just to make sure that you have a sense of what's out there. So that's the big picture. So to dive right in, the big one that is still not available yet, some of the details are still being ironed out, but there was a Main Street tax credit that was passed, SB 1447 by Senator Bradford. The goal of this legislation was to ensure that if folks are able to hold on to their employees or able to hire during this challenging economic time, that the business was able to enjoy some level of tax credit. So the credits are applied to sales and use tax liabilities. It's not yet available, as I mentioned. There's a link there. Definitely encourage you to check it out. The goal is the purpose of the legislation was to ensure that if you're trying to keep your employees on and not getting rid of them, or if you're able to actually hire and expand your employee base, that the state wanted to step in and provide some sort of tax relief or tax subsidy for businesses that did that. Couple other tax credits that are worth mentioning just to put on the table. There's a brand new, it's called a hire homeless tax credit, up to $10,000 per eligible worker. It's a sort of sliding scale. And essentially you would if you hire someone who's in the last 180 days has been homeless, you have to make sure that they have that history of homelessness. But the key thing is that there are nonprofits who certify that yes, this person is eligible for this tax credit, and then you would use that. You would use that when you file for your taxes. So there's additional information. I don't have the link here, but I'll throw the link in the chat at the end about where you can go to learn more about that. But it's worth checking out if you're looking to hire, or if you were engaged in this space, or have hired in this space. It's to provide additional resources to businesses who've done that. Film tax credit, it's a big one. About 100 million. It's mainly for like TV series, independent films, things like that. There's more information there at the bottom. If any of you are in the film industry, it might be of interest, but it's sort of narrowly focused just because it is such a huge part of our industry, at least here in California, especially in Southern California. Another tax credit, the California Competes tax credit. It's primarily for businesses that are looking to upskill their workers or train their workers, and it subsidizes that training. It is an application process, so you actually have to apply. So if you're thinking about upskilling workers, or you know a business that's thinking about upskilling their workers, it's actually not a bad credit to look into. We have to file an application, and then it gets reviewed, and then that tax credit gets approved. So it's not just like a tax credit that you get just when you file your taxes every year. The next round is going to be open in the beginning of 2022. So if that's something of interest, encourage you to check it out. Again, we're just sort of going through these, but if any of these are like, oh, that could be interesting, or oh, I know something that might relate to my business, make sure you check with your CPA, or if you are the CPA and you wear that hat, write it down. You get a copy of this. You can always dig into it and look it up a little later. One thing I did want to mention, we're doing an interesting program with Jewish Vocational Services, JVS, out of San Francisco. They're in the process of actually training a bunch of bookkeepers. So folks who are hard to employ or coming out of the system, they're creating bookkeeping training programs. And what they're doing is actually connecting those newly trained CPAs with small businesses that are looking for bookkeeping support. And so it's a subsidized rate. You don't pay full freight, and then you have someone that'll work with you. It's all supervised by a certified CPA. It's a really cool program. Have had a number of businesses that we've connected with who've used their services and found it really valuable to them. And then obviously it's an interesting pilot for JVS as they continue to train and give people careers. So it's just a cool collaboration. If you're interested in learning more there, we can definitely connect you. There's a forum link at the bottom of the page. But we can connect you with the folks who are running that program if there's interest in potentially hiring one of these bookkeepers for your business. Andy, you came off to say, do you want to ask a quick question?
Yeah. Loney asked, could the CCTC be used for an artisan apprentice training program?
Great question. I think so. I think it can. It's just a matter of whether or not I think you are eligible. The question is whether or not when you apply, you actually receive that credit. Well, let's do this. At the end, let me check into that, and I'll send you more information. It should be there on the web link right there, but if not, I can follow up and we can find out if there's specific eligibility against that. Cool. So that's sort of a quick snapshot of the tax credit changes, opportunities, sort of the big ticket items. And again, happy to answer any questions about those when we get near the end. So a couple real quick. So additional programs. A lot of this is around cash. So access to capital, grants, and loans. These are sort of the big new pieces of the puzzle for small businesses moving forward here in 2022. We talk about, there's a new paid leave grant that I mentioned. California Rebuilding Fund is a really cool loan fund for small businesses specifically. There are a couple of then state grant programs. I think we're all familiar with the federal programs of the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL program and a number of other federal resources. The state also has been stepping in and is stepping in to provide relief. There was obviously the big California Relief Grant program of $4 billion that rolled out. That last round just closed, I think it was last week. But there are still relief programs moving forward. And really what we're seeing in the market is a shift from needing that infusion of cash and grant capital to thinking about how do we do long-term recovery and what sort of larger loans and lending can be secure to ensure that businesses have the cash and the runway to grow their way out of this pandemic. So this summer, Newsom signed this big package he's calling the California Comeback. Lots of money in there, lots of different provisions. This is just a snapshot of some of this stuff. But it was a huge investment across the board in a bunch of different industries and a bunch of different categories. But we're just going to talk a little bit about some of the small business investments. A lot of this money also from this California Comeback plan was part of the federal American Rescue Plan that was passed by Congress. So this is a little bit of state money, a little bit of federal money together to support small businesses. I think many of you may be familiar with the Golden State Stimulus, the second round, right? This is essentially like an EITC for Californians is kind of what it is. It's a stimulus, just like the federal government gave a lot of folks federal stimulus. The state also did for much lower income folks. That was part of the package. There's also this paid family leave grant program we'll talk about in a second, loan fund, and then these two new programs, the Microbusiness Relief Grant Program and the Independent Venues Grant Program, which will be opening in the coming future, but I don't believe are open yet, are two new programs that will be coming out. So a little bit about the paid leave grant. I sort of mentioned it at the top, but paid leave is something that if you have 5 or more employees, all your employees are eligible to take. It is a program that's run through the state. So you as the business owner are not paying their wages while they're gone. It's actually funded through an insurance program through the state. So if you have any employees, they already are paying into a paid leave fund. If you have 5 or more employees, then they can leave, and then you would just have to keep that job open for them for when they return. But this is a program where if your employee needs to take time off to care for a loved one or have a baby, they can file an application through the state, and they get about 2/3 to 80–90% of their wages replaced by the state, not by you as the small business owner. And so it's a program that already exists. If you have any employees, it's already a line item. It comes out of your SDI contribution, so it's already a line item on your that you already pay or that they already pay to the state, that you already take out of their paycheck. So one of the things that's changed is that the requirement that smaller businesses allow employees to come back to their place of work and they hold that job open, that shifted a little bit over this last year. So if someone has 5 or more employees, then they are required to hold that job open until that person comes back. Previously, that was at 20 or more. It's now dropped down to 5 or more. And then to make this easier for really small businesses, part of what the governor passed in the package was a small grant to businesses who had less than 10 employees and had one of their employees go out on paid leave. And so if you've had an employee go out on paid leave and you have less than 10 employees, you can actually apply to receive a $500 grant for each employee that utilize that paid family leave program. And again, right, if you are their employer, you're not paying for their paid family leave. You're just keeping their job. And so this is a grant program to make it easier for businesses to think about how do we make sure that we keep that job open in a small grant program. So you would apply through I think it's the Orange County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is managing that contract. we're doing a bunch of workshops with them to get the word out. But if you're interested in more, I'm happy to get you connected. Oh, there it is right there, CaliforniaPaidLeaveAlliance.com. You can check it out. But that's how you know where you're eligible. You can check out the eligibility and whether or not that's something that you, or maybe a business owner that you work with, may be eligible to receive that. So that's the paid leave grant program that just went live. So the next thing I just want to mention is this really cool program called the California Rebuilding Fund. Obviously, as we know, accessing capital has been a huge need for many small businesses since the pandemic has really drastically changed consumer behavior and the consumer dynamics in our communities and our neighborhoods. And so one of the things that the state's put together is this fund, putting together a bunch of different money to make sure that entrepreneurs are able to access more affordable capital. As we all know, the smaller dollar the capital, the more difficult it is to secure a loan of that size. It's easier to get a much larger loan if you're a larger business, but really small businesses often have trouble accessing really small loans because it's expensive to make really small loans. And so the state's stepping in to make more small loans accessible to entrepreneurs around the state. Affordable interest rate of 4.25, maximum of 100K or less, right? Because they're trying to target that smaller loan size market. 60-month loan term, and the nice piece of it is it's interest only for the first 12 months to really focus on supporting entrepreneurs growing their way out of the current economic situation. And so the whole goal is to give as much runway as possible to entrepreneurs to use this. It can be working capital, it can be used for a number of different things. Here's a little bit about business eligibility. It is geared towards smaller businesses, 50 or less employees. It's not for profits. It's for businesses only. And there you can see a couple other eligibility pieces. I do want to mention there is a provision that you have to demonstrate some sort of business decline. So it has to be for businesses that have been impacted by COVID. So it says 25% decline in revenue since January 20th. That's not, in some cases that's hard and fast. I know that can be slightly adjusted, I think, depending on the lender. But it's for smaller businesses, 2.5 million or less in revenue, and generally good, and no delinquencies or bankruptcies in the past. And then a couple other things around, right? No repossessions, liens, unpaid child support, sort of legalese there. And then this is just what you would need to bring if there's interest in accessing that loan. And then in terms of who's eligible, pretty much most businesses are eligible here. A few businesses that aren't, that businesses that are, gambling businesses, right, or lobbying businesses, things like that are not eligible. But for the most part, most businesses are eligible to apply for a California Rebuilding Fund loan. And in order to do it, the nice thing about it is that it's a centralized process. So you go to one site, you can actually go, I know that's a long web link there. If you actually just go to www.caloanfund.org, you can pull it up and it's a single portal access. So you go to that portal, you answer 16 really basic questions about your business. And what it does is it then connects you with a local nonprofit mission-driven lender, or what's called a community development financial institution. So it'll connect you with a nonprofit lender. And the reason the nonprofit lenders are so important is because these are often loans that banks aren't able or don't want to make because they're on the smaller side. And so it's usually left to the mission-driven nonprofit lenders to make these types of loans. And it'll connect you to the local lender, CDFI, and then you can work with them to finish that application and apply for capital. Just a little bit about the backdrop. I think what's really interesting here is that it's a really unique public-private partnership between the state of California, philanthropy, and private industry that's creating a really innovative capital access model for entrepreneurs. There are a couple different, they mentioned there are a couple different facilities, so like how they build each facility is a little different. it doesn't matter for the business owner or the entrepreneur. They can still go to the same portal, enter the same information, and then they can get connected with a lender. But what's really exciting is that it has a lot of private money in it. It has a lot of philanthropic money and a lot of government money. And the government money is to make sure that these loans remain affordable. For instance, the city of San Francisco, they as a city, they put even more money into loans that are made in San Francisco. And so the San Francisco products are actually 0% loans instead of the 4.25% loans. And they're 0% loans because the city decided that they wanted to invest in the fund and make it even more affordable for their local entrepreneurs. And a couple of other counties around the state are thinking about it. We're actually having a briefing for city and county officials, I think in the next week or so, on the fund. We'll make sure that you all get an invitation to that, but it sort of walks into how cities can participate and how cities and regions can think about making sure capital is more available to small businesses in their community. And then the goal is to get this loan fund up to $250 million or more in terms of loan size and making loans. And then if you don't qualify, so if you go through the process, you fill out those 16 questions, and maybe you're not matched with the appropriate nonprofit lender for a whole host of different reasons. Resources will then be available for you to follow up directly with free one-on-one support, either through a small business development center, a women's business center, or other resources that may be available to you locally, where you can chat one-on-one with a business advisor to think through, why wasn't I eligible? How are there other options of capital for me? So we encourage you, if you or someone is applying and is not matched, we encourage you to use that resource page to identify a local technical assistance provider that you can reach out to for free and have a one-on-one conversation about other potential forms of capital or maybe support for your business to continue to grow and navigate the current economic situation. These are, as I mentioned before, they are mission-driven nonprofit lenders that are making these loans. And so they aren't in it for the money, right? They're in it for the mission of providing capital and resources to entrepreneurs all over the state. These are the nonprofits, and they're called CDFIs, or Community Development Financial Institutions. As you can see, they're represented all over the state, and then we also have a handful of statewide CDFIs that are also part of it. But you, as the applicant, when you go in and fill out the information, you will then be matched by to however many CDFIs that you potentially could match with, and then you would choose the CDFI that you want to work with. Sometimes you just match with one CDFI, and then you could work with them to try to get a loan. But this is the goal is to have CDFIs that are all over the state that know their region and know the lenders in their community and the borrowers in their community. So that's California Building Fund. So the Microbusiness COVID Relief Grant is also something that is new. It's not yet live, but as many of us know, there have been an explosion of new startup small businesses over this past year, and we also know that really small businesses are often businesses who are creating most of the jobs. And so as part of the California Comeback Plan, the goal was to create a grant program specifically for really tiny businesses. So specifically for those micro businesses, those businesses that are just getting off the ground or that only have a couple employees, as a way to help them navigate the challenging landscape. As I mentioned, it's not yet open, but if you sign up for our newsletter and when it opens, we'll be sending out information and resources about it as soon as we know more. As I mentioned, there are some criteria because it is for very small businesses, right? 50 grand in revenue or less is one of the requirements. Fewer than 5 FTEs, right? Because they want the really, really small businesses. And then there are a couple other pieces of criteria there. And one of the other things is they're looking for businesses that maybe didn't get the state grant, right? Or haven't gotten other forms of relief. And this is a way to try to grab and support those businesses that maybe otherwise weren't able to benefit from any of the federal or state relief. And then the last one, grant program, again, this is a new one, just like the Microbusiness Grant Fund, which is an independent venues grant program. This also is not yet open yet. It should be coming, we think, and we hear probably in January. but it's a grant for venues, and it's going to be awarded equal to or less of $250K or 20% of your gross revenue for 2019, and a total of $150 million. The key here, it's not going to be first come, first serve. It's going to be based on priority factors. Those are still being developed in terms of which businesses and which types of businesses will be prioritized in the framework to apply. But again, as soon as we have more information and have a sense of how that grant is going to work, but if you are a venue, I think they're still working on the criteria of exactly which businesses qualify as venue businesses. So still more to come there, but it is a grant program that we should see coming in the coming months. I encourage you to just be aware of that as well. All right. Should we take a few questions about I just pulled up the chat box before we dive into CalSavers. So I see here, I'll just type in the chat box. So one of the questions, the loanfund.org. So that's, I just dropped in the chat. That is the link to the California Rebuilding Fund. Feel free to check that out. Let's see. And then what's Beth, the question?
One more question from Yvette. How complex is the employee upskill grant application?
It can be pretty complex. There often businesses will hire a consultant to fill out the application for them, and then if successful, the consultant will be eligible to receive a portion of the proceeds. So sometimes you're working with a consultant, it'll be risk-free. But I would say check out the website. Sometimes, depending on the type of business, it can be straightforward. Depending on the business, though, it could be a more complex. But I would recommend checking that out. If you're interested in potentially talking to a consultant, let me know. Happy to get you connected with some of the folks that we know are at least a little bit more reputable in the space, if there is interest to pursue it.
One more question from Amanda. What about the California Dream Fund? It was $35 million for startup funds for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. That's still coming. It is similar to the Microbusiness Grant Program in that it's targeted to a specific slice of businesses. It is just for startups, and we still are waiting for some of the additional criteria there. But it is an additional program that we will be following and making sure that we share information about as soon as it's available. But it is one of those programs, because we've seen so many business starts over this past year, there's something that the state stepped in to provide. Great question. Thank you, Amanda.
That's all the questions we have for right now, so go ahead.
Cool. All right. So talked a little bit about the tax credits, talked a little bit about the cash and the grants and the capital that's sort of part of this broader package. Want to then sort of transition into benefits for employees and what's out there. So there's this really cool program that is continuing to expand here in California. It's called CalSavers. It is a benefit. It is a retirement program specifically for employers that are not able to offer retirement programs at work. And it is meant to be something that employers can use to ensure that their employees still have access to quality, affordable retirement. And the reason that the state stepping in is because oftentimes for businesses, it can be really tough. It can be inexpensive, it can be confusing, right? You can be fiduciary, you can be legally liable if you as a business owner choose the wrong retirement plan for your employees. There are minimum participation requirements if you're trying to get a benefit plan or a retirement plan for employees. So CalSavers gets rid of all those things. And the reason it's so important is because there's a huge retirement gap that already exists in the state and in the country. And so by having a program that makes it as easy as possible for employers to provide retirement for their employees, the goal is to drive up savings and increase savings for not just employees, but also employers. And as you can say, the gap is between $6 and $14 trillion between the retirement gap between what folks need and what they're likely to be able to provide and afford. And as I mentioned, right, the three main reasons that we have found in talking to a number of business owners that business owners have trouble offering retirement isn't because business owners don't want to offer retirement to their employees. It because it can cost a bunch of money and it's really complex, or you can get sued if you choose the wrong one, right? And one of the beauties of Cal Savers is it's auto enrollment, so it's an opt out, right? So if you use this program, your employees are automatically enrolled unless they want to opt out, and then they would work directly with the program administrator to opt out. So you as the employer don't actually have to deal with a lot of that back and forth. It's it's a line item on the W-2 when you pay it when you pay the paychecks. It's a piece of their payment that goes directly to the program. It is employee only, so no employer dollars go towards this, so it's not an employer contribution. And it's just an IRA. It's just a standard IRA that goes to Cal Savers that all employees begin paying into, unless an employee decides to opt out. You do have to have 5 or more employees in order to be able to enroll in this program. And then when you do, if you have 5 or more employees, how it works is you go to Cal Savers and you just automatically enroll your folks. And then Cal Savers will notify your folks that they're being enrolled and asking them if they want to opt out. And if they want to opt out, Cal Savers will then let you know that so-and-so is opting out. And they'll also let you know if any of the employees want to change their percentages or want to adjust what they're saving. Cal Savers then communicates directly with the employer about that as well. So the information education as well as the program management part is not on the plate of the small business owner. It's the third-party administrator that handles that. It's also open for self-employed. You can open your own account if you so choose. And the really nice thing about Cal Savers, especially for certain industries, is that you can take it with you wherever you go. So if you already have a Cal Savers account and you're working for one employer and they pay into Cal Savers, then as soon as you start with that new employer, you'll just start that employee will start seeing part of his check deposited into his Cal Savers account. Then if they leave that employer, go to a different employer, and that different employer also does Cal Savers, as soon as they start working, more of their money will go into their account. So it's a portable retirement account that will follow that employee wherever they go, as long as that employer is paying into Cal Savers and has a Cal Savers account. So it creates much less friction and the ability for employees to save more effectively during their career. There are some program features. So basically it's a 5% contribution rate. It ticks up every year. There's sort of a standard setting. As we mentioned, employee can opt out anytime if they're not interested in continuing with the program. And the really nice thing is there's a call center for employers. So if you as an employer have enrolled your folks and you're trying to figure out what to do next, there's a call center that's available, and they have really low response times, at least last time we checked, and have been able to work well with employers to help get them enrolled, and as well as making sure that any questions that they have are answered. Right, and then the employers don't have to contribute, as I mentioned. It's employee only funded, and again, it's about the program specifically working directly with the employee to define how much is deposited and whether or not they want to opt out or not. So employers, you can register whenever you want. There's no limit to when you can get in. Larger employers, though, there are deadlines. So as of last year, employers with 100 or more employees have to do one of two things. They either have to let their employees enroll in Cal Savers, or they have to go buy a retirement product on the market to provide retirement to their employees. In June of this year, just this summer, the deadline was extended to employers with 50 or more employees. So if you have 50 more employees, either got to let your folks enroll in Cal Savers or need to provide retirement through work. And then the big date is next year on June 30th, 2022. Businesses with 5 or more employees will be required to be a part of this, to either allow their employees to enroll in Cal Savers, or they can go purchase a retirement product on the open market if they want to do that. So that's sort of the timeline, and then once it's implemented at 5 or more, that's the threshold. If you're less than 5, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. where sort of cover this, right? It helps level the playing field. As I mentioned, we know a lot of employers who want to offer retirement. It's just tough, and can be complex, and the fiduciary liability can be concerning. And so the goal of this program was try to take all those things off the plate of the small business, and make sure that it's much easier for businesses to offer these products. Yeah, so if you want to get involved, feel free to sign up. Check out our resources in terms of newsletters. If you're interested in getting engaged on any of these policy conversations around these programs, please let us know. We're constantly having conversations in Sacramento with policymakers about how to make sure that the programs and policies that actually move the needle for entrepreneurs are part of the conversation. And so it's something that we'd love to hear from you. And if there's any interest in learning more about the upcoming programs that I mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out and let us know. And so with that, looks like we're running a little ahead of schedule, which is great, which means we got more time for questions. Yeah, welcome any questions, thoughts, or comments, or happy to dig deeper into any of these areas. I know we sort of ran through a bunch of information. So if there are any of these areas that you want to go back, talk a little bit more in depth about, happy to do that as well.
Great. Here is some questions for you. Do you know of any similar programs with fewer than 5 employees?
Yeah, it's a great question. We were actually really disappointed when we were advocating for this legislation a few years ago, that they put the threshold in there. So if you have less than 5 employees, you can, there are a couple ways you can still access it. So your employees can go to CalSavers and create their own accounts. And if they do that, then you as the employer can still do a direct deposit into their account. So you can still access it, but it wouldn't be automatic enrollment, right? The employer, you wouldn't be able to just automatically enroll your employees, and the CalSavers program would then work directly with your employees. Your employees have to proactively get those sign up for their own accounts, and then tell you as the employer, hey, I'd like a line item kicked into the direct deposit, like a split deposit into my account every month. This is how much I'd like you to put in there, and then you can do that. And then technically, it's not, so you can do it that way. It's not the best workaround. But it is that is the challenge, and the rationale there was they wanted it to be 5 or more because they thought if a business had less than 5 employees, it'd be too hard for the business, and so they didn't want to require that businesses with 5 or less. But what that did is it actually excluded then businesses with 5 or less from actually being able to participate. So we're still working on it, and if there are advocacy opportunities, if you're interested in getting engaged there, please let us know. We'll put you on our list.
If you are self-employed, is it 5% of net or gross?
So if you're self-employed, you can choose. So what you would do is you would go to CalSavers and you would open an account, and then you would just make direct deposits in there or whenever and however you want. And right, and if you're self-employed, you're not getting paid on a W-2, right? You're earning money a whole bunch of different ways, and so you could just pick a percentage, or you could pick a flat amount that you want to be contributing to your retirement account. But that would be up to you, depending on how you want to manage your own retirement savings. But it's free to go and open a CalSavers account as a self-employed individual.
If you have a payroll company, Paychecks, for example, is there a seamless implementation of that?
Yeah, great question. CalSavers has been having many long conversations with ADP and with Paychecks and a number of payroll companies to build better integration. It's coming. I think Intuit was the first company to sort of come out with some sort of integration for CalSavers, but they're in conversations and in talks to do that. It is definitely the goal to make it as easy and seamless as possible, and payroll companies are slowly getting to that point. But the biggest thing I would recommend is just shoot a note to your ADP or Paychex representative and say, hey, are you guys plugged into CalSavers yet? And encourage them to do that, because the sooner they get plugged in, the easier it'll be for you.
Is there any other recommendations for retirement plans for small businesses? It will be required for us to offer one by June 2022. Is that correct?
Yeah, great question. So yes, I'm not I'm not a retirement advisor, so I'm not qualified to tell you which plan to pick. But what will happen is there is a deadline by the summer to be next summer, June, in order to offer retirement to employees. And you can go if you want to go buy something, or you want to set up an IRA, or you go to a local retirement broker and you want to purchase a plan that he may have. Those are all options that are available to you. You don't have to do CalSavers. The value with CalSavers is that it is something that you don't have to pay for, and it doesn't matter what, and it's just a very simple, standard, straightforward plan, and that the integration with their technology allows you just to communicate directly with them. But if you want to use something else, you may. I will say they probably won't be doing much enforcement for the smaller businesses for probably a little while, right? I can't promise that, but they have, to my knowledge, I don't even think they're enforcing it yet for the larger businesses, as they're trying to make sure that everything's coming in. So I encourage you to check it out. Encourage you to take a dry run and test run with there. I mean, if you have 5 or more, you could apply right now and get plugged in right now. I do know at this moment, the sooner you get in, probably the better, because they're offering white glove service, right? They have representatives in different regions that'll actually work with you. They have that call center. But my guess is that when this next deadline hits and you have a lot of businesses trying to enroll all at the same time, they'll be a lot busier. So the sooner you enroll, probably the better, and it'll allow you to have probably a much better experience and more support from their team. So if you're interested, or if that's something that looks like you're going to need to do, I'd recommend going ahead and reaching out now and seeing what you can do to enroll your employees.
Awesome. Can you be a sole proprietor, or do you need to be an LLC?
No, you can be a sole proprietor. It's really about if you are anyone that's receiving a W-2 paycheck is going to be if the employer is enrolled in CalSavers and has 5 or more employees, and you receive a W-2 paycheck, that employee with the W-2 paycheck will need to be enrolled in CalSavers. If you're a sole proprietor and you don't have employees, you just go to CalSavers and set up your own account, right? And you can then directly deposit any amount of money that you want into your retirement savings. But this really just is about W-2 employees and them being automatically enrolled into the program.
How does this work for a self-employed person that's the owner/only employee of an LLC set up as an S corp and utilizes a payroll company?
So that would mean that you W-2 yourself, correct? Okay, a thumbs up. Yes. So if you are W-2ing yourself, right, that's fine. Because if you have less than 5 employees, you could still enroll yourself in CalSavers. But again, you as the employee with your employee hat would have to create your own CalSavers account, and then you would direct the company through the payroll to put a line item into your CalSavers account. So you could still do that. Because you have less than 5 employees, you wouldn't be automatically enrolled.
Will the program ever allow employers to match contributions?
As it's structured now, no. Mainly that's due to ERISA concerns, but that's not in the card at the moment. So if you want to contribute to an employee's retirement, you can purchase 401k plans and other sorts of plans out there to be able to contribute. So CalSavers may not be the best fit, right? If you want to be contributing to your employee's retirement, you might want to just go buy something off the shelf somewhere from a broker. But if this is so that everyone has access to something, right? And if you want to buy up, great. It's sort of like healthcare, right? Even if you're not able to offer health insurance to your employees, they can still go get coverage through Covered California, right? Through the individual marketplace. And that's sort of the goal here, is let's make sure that everyone has access to something. And then as an employer, if you want to buy up, you're always welcome to do that, but let's make sure that framework works for everybody.
If I have 5 or less employees, do I have to offer a retirement plan by June 2022?
No, you do not. For less than 5 employees, you do not have to offer a retirement plan.
Perfect. That's all the questions we have in the chat box. Does anyone else have a few more questions?
Any questions about any other aspects of the presentation? Any other the grant programs?
Well, Mark, thank you so much. You gave us a lot of fantastic info. Oh, let's see. Looks like we have one more. This isn't California specific, but I'd love insights on ERTC.
Oh, what's ERTC? Could you define ERTC for me?
Hi, or just ERC. Some folks call it the Employee Retention Tax Credit.
Oh, yes.
It's a mess trying to navigate it. So yeah, if you have any insights about where to get some direct
Yes.
feedback, or just
Are you looking to file and apply for it, or where are you in the
potentially,
process?
yeah.
Potentially. I would recommend, have you connected with your local small business development center?
No, not yet.
I will, so if you, here, let me throw it in the chat, just a second. Okay, so if you go, I just threw in the chat, this is a website that we have. So if you can put in your zip code on the map feature, and up will pop local technical assistance providers that can give you free advice. So I would recommend going there and just typing in your zip code and then looking at the map and finding the local TA provider. So there are a bunch of different categories. So I would just scan through and find a TA provider, give them a call. And all those folks listed there offer free to low cost services, and you can just give them a call and say, hey, I'm trying to figure out the tax credit and wanting to know, do you have any free tax advice that I could talk to someone about this and see if they can get you connected. And what they do is they usually have a bunch of individual consultants that then they'll match you with to have a free one-on-one to talk a little bit about it. If that doesn't work, shoot me an email. We'll make sure to get you routed to the right place. And I see Elizabeth, you got your hand up.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm with the City of Berkeley's Office of Economic Development, and I was just curious.
Hey.
I was just curious. Hello. I was just curious how you were, or if, I don't know if it's, I know Small Business Majority does a great job of sending things out through newsletters, but for the Micro Enterprise Relief Grant, I feel like those very small businesses are often hard to find or reach. Like it might be a food truck business, and I know I've had conversations with the Berkeley Chamber and our Bay Area Organization of Black-owned businesses of some of the entrepreneurs that aren't registered with a business license. Like, will there be a requirement for those that they are registered with the state of California, have a state business license or a local business license, or how are they finding them to even alert them that this is going to be an opportunity?
It's a great question. They're trying to figure that out right now. If
Okay.
you have any feedback or recommendations on how those regulations should be written, please feel free to shoot me a note. My colleague Bianca Bloomquist is our outreach manager for Northern California and has a lot of local and regional relationships, and also works closely with GoBiz. So it's GoBiz and the Office of Small Business Advocate that will be writing those regulations. And so I would encourage you to, well, one, we'll let you know once we know what those regulations are. If they're recommendations, that the League of Cities or CSAC is making or planning to make, happy to make sure that we elevate those requests to make sure that the regulations are written in a way that they actually get to the people that need it the most.
Yeah, I guess the one thing I'd suggest, and it kind of has pros and cons depending on how you do it, but is that businesses do have to be compliant with any like business license rules in their city, because we're probably going to be doing a campaign to get businesses amnesties for not having had a business license previously. But it's good if we have a carrot, like all these grants that have been available to businesses during the pandemic required them to have a business license and therefore come in, get amnesty, but get registered with the city, so that in the future, like when we did our own relief grants as a city and we pointed people toward things, we only have the information from those that are registered as, have a business license. So we don't even have a way to let micro enterprises or minority-owned businesses that were some of the most hard hit during this pandemic know that we could support them because they weren't on the books. So yeah, just relay that, I guess, like making that a requirement is good, or maybe there's something we could work together to think about how the amnesty program could be developed in multiple cities so that you get people signed up and give them money.
Yeah, I think that's a really creative strategy, and I think it could be really helpful. If I remember correctly, I think that the counties are going to have first crack at um, uh, uh, being the program managers for this. So the county may be submitting the application to the state to administer this program in the county. So I think so. Why don't we follow up after this? I'll make sure that I pull Bianca into the conversation, and we can check and see where they are in writing the regs now the regs. But
Yeah.
it may not. It may be worth also just pinging the county and see if it's on their radar. Are they putting an application? And if they are, maybe they should, as part of their application, include this, and that could be helpful for best practices.
That would be great. I'm putting my email in the chat. Also, Beth knows how to find me, but and we're working closely with the chamber on the amnesty program that we'll try
Great.
to be rolling out with our finance department in Berkeley, but still a lot of details TBD. But if there are conversations or things that are happening in Alameda County or people we should talk to, please let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll make sure to follow up with you and Bianca, and you guys should definitely connect and chat, because I know she's been thinking through some of this. Great question. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm looking at the comment, lower the business license fees or home application permit fees. Did Connie want to say something about that? I'm not sure I follow. Are you suggesting that that's a relief strategy?
I'm sorry. I think I missed.
She's
Yeah.
as I was talking about this, Connie had posted in the chat, lower the business license fees.
Mm,
or home application permit fees.
Yes, Liz, that would be as a relief strategy.
I see that. Great. Well, I think what you
Gotcha.
should submit, I mean, this is not for small business majority probably, but for the city of Berkeley, if Connie, if you'd like to propose that, I highly recommend emailing the chamber with your ideas and also emailing your city council members. And if you don't know who those are, just type in Berkeley City Council and you will see, and you can email the mayor or you can figure out which council member represents your district. And then I think policy ideas are always welcome by council members.
And Mark, looks like one more question. Do you think the California Relief Grant will have any more rounds? Do you anticipate any more funding, or is that done?
Never say never, but I think it's probably done. I think, as I sort of mentioned, the conversation and what we're hearing from a lot of businesses, that shifting from the cash conversation, the cash grant conversation, the immediate relief conversation, to what are the long, like, right? How do I grow myself out of this? How do I build out of this? How do I change my model to make sure I can survive? And so I think we're going to see a lot more different types of lending products, though. I think we're going to see really interesting things there. We'll still have like the microbusiness grant program, as well as the Dream Fund. So there'll be some smaller, very targeted, I think, grants. But in terms of the size and scope of a $4 billion program, I think this is probably the last round, and it's really going to be about how do you access patient, affordable lending capital, debt capital moving forward.
Great. Well, Mark, thanks again. We've really appreciated your expertise here today. Just a reminder, we will post this webinar to our website. So if you all want to rewatch it later, you can. And we'll send out some links and contact info for Mark and Bianca should anyone have any follow-up questions. And I just want to let everybody know, a week from today, the 14th at noon, the Chamber's Berkeley Business Bootcamp is returning, and our first presentation is how to raise funding from supportive, values-aligned investors. So I think that'll complement this presentation very nicely. So if you'd like to register for that a week from today at noon, hop over to berkeleychamber.com and you can register. So thanks again. I wish you all a good day and week, and we will see you next time. Thanks again, Mark.
Thanks for having me.